It's behind another A4, on this occasion Union of South Africa, that we arrive at the Granite City, Aberdeen. These scenes were filmed in 1964, 3 years before the joint station centenary, an occasion that went largely unnoticed by the railway authorities. Until the flurry of closures of the 1960s, several branches radiated from Aberdeen, but none were as famous or as prestigious as the former Great North of Scotland Railway's line to Ballater on Royal Deeside. The branch left the main line at Ferryhill Junction, 3/4 of a mile south of Aberdeen Station, and the first station on the line was Cults. Essentially a suburban station, Cults was 3 miles from Ferryhill Junction. Before much speed could be raised, the following station at Cutter was reached. For many years, the terminus of the suburban services known affectionately as subbies. A paper mill had been established at Cutter in the 1750s, and 2 centuries later had expanded to become the largest employer in the area. For many years, the mill's goods traffic gave Cutter the highest freight tonnage of any station on the line, and to cater for this traffic, the mill had its own sidings. After Cutter, the line became single track as it left the Aberdeen suburbs behind and entered open country, arriving at Park. The station was on the north bank of the River Dee, and to give access to the station from the south side of the river, the GNSR built a road. The road's level crossing controlled from the adjacent signal box, a typical example of GNSR architecture. After leaving Park, the line was sandwiched between the A93 trunk road and the river before reaching the halt at Crathes, originally opened for the private use of the Laird of Crathes. "17 miles after leaving Aberdeen, the line reached Banchory, one of the largest intermediate stations on the branch. The Deeside Railway Company, who also established their locomotive workshops here, originally opened a station at Banchory in 1853. But in 1903, the station was rebuilt and relocated to the west of the original station site. The station wasn't conveniently sited for much of the town, and in an effort to compete with the surge in private and public road transport, British Railways took a surprising initiative by deciding to open another station to serve the town. Located half a mile west of the main station, Dee Street Halt was opened in 1961, and although better situated for passengers, its lack of even basic shelter from the weather didn't encourage custom. At Banchory, the Fook water entered the Dee through a narrow gorge, and the 18th century bridge spanning the gorge was a popular attraction for visitors to Banchory. When the Deeside Railway from Aberdeen was originally opened in 1853, Banchory had been the terminus, but 6 years later, work was completed on a 15-mile westward extension of the line. From Banchory, the line climbed steadily for over 2 miles as it swung away from the river, and 4 miles after leaving Dee Street Halt, the rural station of Glassell was reached, approximately halfway to Ballater. Torfins, 24 miles from Aberdeen, the arrival of the railways transforming the area into a fashionable country retreat for wealthy Aberdonians. The village's name derived from Torfin, a Scandinavian ally of Macbeth. The area's links to the 11th century Scottish king continue at Lumphanan, 3 miles from Torfins, where in 1057 Macbeth, King of Scotland, died in battle. Rail operations on the line were conducted at a fairly leisurely pace, and after a chat with station staff, the driver gets his train underway. From Banchory to Lochfannon, the line headed northwest and away from the River Dee, but by the time it reached the wayside station at Des, it was curving southwest back towards the river, meeting at Aberdeen. The Deeside Railway had reached the village of Aberdeen following its extension from Banchory in 1859, although the original station was demolished and replaced some 40 years later. Even at the time of rebuilding, the village's population was less than 1,500, but nevertheless, passengers were offered facilities and a level of comfort that rivaled much larger stations. Although the wood-lined walls appear gloomy by modern standards, they were fashionable for the time, but by the 1960s were an anachronism that, in common with the uniformed station master, were relics of the Victorian age. When the Deeside Railway was planning further westward extensions, links to Braemar and Blair Athol were considered, but economic realities dictated otherwise, and Ballater was decided upon. A once common practice on Britain's railways was the periodic burning of undergrowth on embankments. For much of the journey to Ballater, the line ran parallel with the A93, which at Dinnet joined the A97 from the north, this additional road access giving the wayside station a relatively high level of traffic. One of the most attractive stretches of the line was at Cambus-o-May, where a suspension bridge gave travellers access from the station to the south bank of the river. The bridge, which spanned both river and railway, was partly sponsored by the GNSR, but after falling into disrepair, was replaced in the 1980s. 4 miles after leaving Cambus-o-May, Ballater comes into view. The line leading off to the left, serving the goods depot, and a 2-road engine shed, which closed following displacement of steam traction from the line. From 1958, diesel rail cars and a battery-operated rail car shared duties on the Aberdeen to Ballater services, taking a leisurely 1.5 hours on the 43.25-mile journey. Much of Ballater's prominence in Deeside resulted from its royal patronage, with successive generations of the royal family using the station en route to Balmoral, 10 miles from Ballater. The line closed to passenger traffic in February 1966, although some goods services continued at Banchory and Ballater until July that year, the line falling victim to the rise in car ownership and competition from local bus operators.